All right. I am live on YouTube. How does Twitch look? My camera is working, which is nice. My cat is bugging me, so that's cool. Um, Give people a moment to figure out I'm live. For anyone who wants to come and chill, relax. What am I doing here? I need to get. I don't know how to actually manage. Create highlight, add stream, share. I don't want to do any of that. I want to manage. How do I manage? Webcam. This one. Oh, stream key currently assigned. I don't need a new. No, that's not what I need. I will eventually figure out how to do all this. I promise. I swear to it. Here we go. What's this? Analysis, view. Okay, control room. This is what I wanted. YouTube's interface is kind of a pain to track all this down. Okay, so this is the control room. That's for vertical. I don't want. I want it for this one. Interesting. All right, where? What? Seriously? YouTube? Oh, there it is. Control room. All right, I've got that set up. Cool, cool. All right, let's get some work done today, huh? So I started to do this on my previous live stream, but it was being a pain in the butt, and it actually took a lot more work than I thought it was. But I finally got our C++ code base converted back to using C++ modules. And I wrote a nice little blog post that kind of goes over all the pain I went through to get all this stuff working again, with a couple of code snippets explaining what needed to change. And part of it was the fact that I had to actually modify the third-party libraries I was using so that they could be used with the C++ modules as well. Most of it being these static consts that needed to turn into static inline consts in order to keep the static global variables on a per translation unit basis. That was not playing nice with GCC 15 and C++ modules. So I did have to go in and patch third-party libraries. But using VC package, that was relatively straightforward, and I was able to get C++ modules up and running. And in our code base here, we can see that. I've got .ixx files, that is essentially C++ interface files, all using C++ modules. I'm pretty sure we compile. We do. One more compile just to verify. Yep, success. And then we should be able to run our game in Godot. Oh my gosh, I forgot about this. The Godot editor is not playing nice with my Linux virtual machine's 4K scaling. Where was that? think it was called scaling. Display scale. So I have to set this to 100%. Now this is going to be a problem, I think. Yeah, I can't even save it because the scaling is so messed up with Godot. Oh my gosh, Godot. I just want you to work. Alright, well, I tried. You cannot say I didn't try. We're going to have a change of plans. I am going to hop out of my virtual machine here and hop back to my desktop, which always feels like I'm playing the most dangerous game, but the show must go on. So let's shut this down for now. I will pull this up on my desktop here, like this. Boom. Oh my gosh, why is my camera so big? I can fix this. How's that? Good size? Okay. So I'm on Windows in this situation, not Linux. Still make sure we compiled. MSVC release. I think I have the latest main. So we'll compile it. Make sure everything compiles. That looks good. We'll run it in Godot. Everything's looking good. So, after all that work, getting C++ modules up and running, I think I have to move away from C++. Unfortunately. It takes too much time and effort to maintain software pipelines to make sure my C++ code is compiling on Windows, Linux, and Mac. In fact, when I don't need that window open. Let's try another one. I'm going to pull up my GitHub project here. Ooh, we have a pull request running. Or tried to run. But it takes, yeah, here's a Windows build that took 43 minutes, a Mac build that took 15 minutes. Some of this could be optimized, that is fair. But some of it is just the sheer volume of pipeline management that has to go into making sure your dependencies get properly cached, built correctly. Anytime you make a change to the dependency, as in when I had to patch my third-party dependencies to get C++ modules to work, that is pipeline time that has to run. And for each machine that I want to support and make sure works. And you know, for a solo developer, that's probably fine mostly, but eventually your minutes run out, right? And I've used other options before. I've tried GitLab. GitLab only has 400 free minutes. GitHub has 2,000 free minutes, but I'm at the end of the month. I'm out of minutes, and I've already spent like $12 additional on pipeline time to keep this stuff running. And I'm finding I am spending more time maintaining C++ code, maintaining pipeline infrastructure, and less time actually writing my game, that I think I'm done. I think I want to focus more on making the game, which means more focus on using Godot and GDScript. I have looked at other framework options. I've looked at Qt QML. I've looked at Flutter. I've looked at I've looked at rolling my own with Awin. But and I took a brief glance at Unity, but I'm not ready to. I've already put so much time and effort into this game here that I'm not ready to just switch and start learning another framework. And so what it basically boils down to for me is how quickly I can get this project compiled and exported into a game, an executable, and how minimal time I have to spend maintaining the repository, the CI/CD architecture, the pipeline scripts themselves, trying to keep them optimized so that I don't have to, so it doesn't charge me additional dollars for pipeline minutes, that kind of thing. And so I think what it's going to boil down to is with Godot, I can use a single Linux runner to produce binaries for Linux, Windows, Mac, and if some reason we want to support mobile or web, we would be able to get that too, all from a single runner, because that runner would read all the script files, um, convert them, like we would run our tests on it, but we'd only run the tests once, right? And then we would produce the executables. Whereas right now with our pipelines, I have these workflow files for Linux that does all kinds of stuff, Mac that does all kinds of stuff, and Windows that does all kinds of stuff. Which, you know, for a C++ project, it makes sense. You want to make sure your C++ code compiles for all these platforms. It's just taking too much of my time. So instead of spending more time maintaining all of this, I think I'm going to spend that time converting all of this C++ code that I've written, which is going to be its own effort, I think, because part of why I went the C++ route is I know C++ more than I know Godot. So now I'm going to have to actually spend time learning like Godot best practices and the Godot way of managing your data and your game logic, instead of how I was doing it with this entity component system, writing C++. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with this. And for tonight, I'm at least going to get started on, at a minimum, trying to come up with a plan to convert the C++ to Godot. Which really means, like, how do I want to handle the game logic? So with Godot, in this node-based system, I don't know where I want to put my scripts, for instance. Because right now I have a system that sits there and updates all of the kinematic movement, the motion, if you will, somewhere here. I had a system folder. There it is. Called motion. And this was kind of like our own little mini physics system, right? Where Godot has its own character body 2D, where you can give it a character of velocity and move it or slide it, move and slide, I think. We were doing it here. And we were doing it for every entity that had a kinematic, stats, and engine and steering component. So now, like, what is the Godot way of doing that? Do I need to, for instance, on my player object here, do I need to attach a node for kinematics, attach a node for stats, attach a node for steering, etc.? Like, I don't know if I need to do that on a per node basis, or if, like, I have a root level node that sole purpose is designed to sit there and iterate over all my entities that have these components. But Godot is inherently not an ECS system, so I think that would go against it. And if I tried to do that, I'd probably hurt myself performance-wise, having to like navigate these nested tree of nodes versus just attaching the logic to the node that needs it. So I got to get that figured out, figure out how I want to do that. And it might just be one step at a time, which is, okay, right now the player has a script and it somewhere here, I think, will update itself based on some state. Yeah, get position right here. So the player has a physics process that listens to this Briathorn object with a player ID to grab its state and then update the visual representation of it. So I'm probably going to sit here and ponder for a minute and see what else I could do to figure this out. Ooh, and I'm going to eat my protein cookie. I'm going to contemplate C++23 Godot and eat a protein cookie. All right, I'm going to also do an audio check because the last time I didn't do an audio check, turns out I was muted for an hour and a half. All right, so this is me talking normally. All right, I think we're good. Okay. Oh, man. So what do we do? I also don't know what to do about the fact that Godot has these GDScript files and these scene files, and you can almost intermix them because I can create a GDScript that derives from a node, and then I can just add the script itself as a node to the scene. So that feels like that's going to be a maintenance pain too. Hmm. I do like I do like having a single point of entry for modifying state because that does make building an application easier to follow. So the global Briarthorn object might still exist. We might still have command APIs with scripts. All that makes sense. We might still use data models. So maybe I can still build data models. So if I did all of that, then I technically could add some root node systems that operate on those data models. Like that could work. Because at least that way we can separate the data from the visualization, animation, that kind of thing. Hmm. My cat is practically begging me. He hears me talking. I've been quiet all day, working from home. Hmm. I need to see. I need to see some other like examples of Godot, almost people building projects. But you got to be careful because a lot of Godot developers are hobby developers who aren't necessarily trying to make sure their code base is maintainable for other people. That's something I have to make sure of with this project. Is that anyone else, while we can like work in parallel, we're not blocking each other while we're working. Hmm. So I could maybe commands, like implementing or writing commands would not be very invasive because those would just be separate standalone scripts, I think. Because I could write, for example, I could write weapon fire command in a script and use it to pass state. Wonder how I would access that state in C++. Would I have to do that via string? What does that look like? Because here's the C++ implementation. I have access to the setters and getters here. I could always go scorched earth and just delete everything. That doesn't sound good. Hmm. You could have. We could just have a kinematic update script that you attach to a player. Can you attach scripts as nodes? Is that something you can do? If I wanted to, let's see, I can attach a node, or I can attach a script to the node, but can I have like multiple scripts? Well, this looks like a script, right? So yeah, I think I can. So what would that look like? Do we... I closed my scene and I lost it? Oh, there it is. Let's look at the world, actually. So the world, I could have, or let's the enemy itself. So the enemy could have an icon. I could technically attach... there's a Briathorn node. How did I do that for the player? What is this thing? It's a node. Oh, it's an empty node with a script attached. Okay, so yeah, I guess I could do that. Hmm. I wonder if there's a YouTube video. I think I'm right about this. I want to keep my data separate from visualization. So I implement a data model, multiple data models. I can still use this command API to update those data models to perform some kind of action with a target, a receiver, whatever you have to modify the data in the data models. None of that changes. Then you can still access the data models. So right now we call, I think, Briathorn, where is it? Player. We call Briathorn.model entities, for instance, which would give us an array of entities, and then this would index into that array of entities. A command to initialize a player would go into that array of entities and add it. But see, that's like, that gets a little heavy handed because now we're just implementing our own entity component system and a poor man's entity component system into Godot. Hmm. What is the Godot way? We could have a data model. We could still have the enemies refer to their spot in that data model. So I don't think that has to go away. So we could still initialize an enemy, an entity. But instead of doing that, just make it too difficult. Because I could add a kinematic component to the enemy. That component would contain the fields you need, so that would be speed, velocity, or yeah, velocity, position, heading. And then the enemy here would use its child kinematic state to visualize itself, which would be what this is doing. That just gets to be a little more difficult when you need to form a bunch of logic on a collection of kinematic components, because then you have to traverse all of the enemies, all their children, or maybe even their children's children to get those entities. Unless Godot has a way to like reference all that. So I think I'm still right in that I want to keep the data separate from the visualization. Because then game logic can just occur on an array of data. Oh, how does Godot do this? Where's my trusty AI companion? I've got a question to ask. Let's see what the LLMs have to say. I currently make use of ECS system to manage game data and logic. Game data and logic. I make use of the command API to bridge Godot and my C++ backend. I need to move on from C++. This means all of my logic and state needs to move into Godot. I am struggling to know whether I should still keep my data and logic separate from Godot's visualization nodes and controls. What are some best practices for Godot in general? For example, I have a motion, let's do sensor detection. Sensor detection system that iterates over all entities and uses their sensor component to determine over all entities and uses the sensor component to determine if they can be detected. If they can, they get added to a track list owned by the player/ownership. All of this is done via ECS. I am not interested in implementing an ECS system using GDScript, but I do want to come up with a reasonable solution for Godot. What do you think? Let's see what we're thinking here. Warning, my YouTube stream's current bitrate of 1.5K is lower than the recommended bitrate of 13.5K. What? Are you serious? I have it set to 30,000. I don't know what that's all about. All right. Okay, so let's see what it has to say here. This is a meaty architectural question. Looking at your current code gives good context. You already have a clean separation. C++ model, command bridge, Godot visualization. So the question is really about how to replicate that discipline without a framework. The short answer, yes, keep data logic separate from visualization. This is not an ECS principle, it is just good software design. Godot has native idioms for all these layers, all three layers. That's what I need to know. Components data. Godot calls them resources. Oh. Systems logic, autoloads or dedicated manager nodes. Okay, so that I was curious about that. So I wonder if this means I should have like I said, root nodes that are just sitting there processing game logic. Let's see. Systems, autoloads, or dedicated manager nodes. Autoloads, I assume, is the singletons. Dedicated manager nodes. What does that mean? Like manager? Okay. Yeah, I think that's okay. Does that also mean that's where the data goes? Entities, identity. Seen instances in the tree. Tags, groups. You can do an add to group. Interesting. Translating your specific patterns. Components, resources. Your sensor, kinematics, tracks, etc. map clearly to resources. Resources are serializable, editor inspectable, and shareable. A node holds them as properties rather than inheriting from them. This maintains the data as struct feel you had in C++. The node holds them as properties rather than inheriting from them. Okay, that makes sense. Sensor detection system, 2 paths. A manager node, closest to your current approach. Groups replace ECS queries. Your system logic stays centralized and is easy to reason about, almost identical conceptually to what you have now. But it doesn't go into detail what it is. Manager node. Okay, so that's just a node that's going to process the logic, but does it own the data? Option B, Area 2D most Godot native. Replace manual range / angle math entirely with a collision-shaped 2D on each sensor entity. Godot's physics handles the spatial query? What? Oh. So it's saying instead of writing our own sensor detection algorithm, add collision nodes to our radar capability. So then, if our radar is like some circle with a radius or field of view like a cone, when it intersects with another collision body, we can say, hey, you were found. Ah, that's something to think about. Track list manager node. Okay, so your current track list script is already a manager node. It queries a model and spawns, despawns visualization nodes. In pure Godot, the model becomes a plain ref counted or resource class instead of a C++ bridge call. Your visualization layer subscribes to track added, track removed signals. The data bus pattern you already have is exactly right. Expand it rather than replace it. Oh no, that data bus pattern was what we were using early on. I don't even think we're using it right now. Where is that? Data bus. Yeah, we even flagged it as unused signals. Interesting. Auto loads for global state and systems. Player stats, sensor manager, game state machine, keep them lean, only singletons for things that genuinely need global access. Resources for authoring data, define defaults with export. Signals as your command event bus. Your data bus is already doing this. Prefer signals over polling and process. Wherever detection events are discrete rather than continuous. Groups as tags. Has sensor, detectable player, replace ECS component presence queries. What to avoid? Putting game logic inside visualization nodes. Enemy.gd, directly computing physics, etc. This is the pattern you already know to avoid from your current... Yeah, I already know that. You don't want your game or business logic to be tied to what's being visualized. Using process to pull everything when signal callbacks will do. Your current enemy script pulls position every frame. That's fine when bridging C++, but in pure Godot script, you'd have the physics body own its own state and emit signals on meaningful changes. I don't know if I agree with that one. I just don't know. Maybe. I just know that if you start doing signals everywhere, it has a. To be fair, I don't know how Godot's backend works, but signals, a ton of them at a high rate, has a chance to really start bogging things down. But maybe that's what we need to do. All right. So I am thinking we still do the data model thing. I'm not sure how we tie nodes to an element in the data model. I don't know if I was tracking that. We add a track as a node 2D. Get instance ID. So, okay, so is that what we do? We have to use Godot's ID system? What is get instance ID? Can I look that up? Get instance ID. Returns the object's unique instance ID. This ID can be saved in encoded object as ID and can be used to retrieve this object's instance with @globalscope.instancefromID. Interesting. This ID is only useful during the current session. It won't correspond to a similar object if the ID is sent over a network or loaded from a file at a later time. Ooh. It won't correspond to a similar object if the ID is sent over a network or loaded from a file at a regular time. So it's really like a pointer then. That's not going to be good enough. We need... I thought Godot objects had like unique IDs now. Is that not something we can access? Because an instance ID won't be good enough. It's not stable enough. I don't even know where to begin looking. searching ID, but I'm not seeing anything highlighted. Why don't I see anything highlighted in my eyes? Oh, there it is. Inside. Okay. Overridden. Okay, that's not going to work. Let's try that. Is instance valid? Get instance ID. Get meta name default. Meta list. Signal. Yeah, I don't think instance ID is the solution. So we might have to do our own ID system. So they're saying add track as a node. Allocate the track with the node as the target. They're using dictionary. Isn't dictionary like a map? Wouldn't we want like an array? Yeah, but if we're doing a lot of lookups, maybe a dictionary is quicker. Your visualization layer subscribes to track added, track removed. All that makes sense. Practical rules of thumb, auto loads for global states, resources for authoring data, define defaults with export. So one thing I saw is for our components, it's wanting us to use resource subclass. Make sure I'm not stepping on my cat here. So what would that look like? So in Godot, do I need to have a new folder called components? Do I call it components? I don't know if I necessarily want to. Let's ask. For Godot, is there still any benefit to having small components like in an ECS? For example, the components kinematic, stats, engine, steering, player, track list, etc. make up a player object. Instead, should my resource components in Godot just be a player resource? Question mark. Conversation has run dry. That's what's going on. Keep them granular, but the reasons are different than ECS. Your player and non-player components are empty structs, pure tags. Your kinematic, stats, engine, steering components are small data bags. The reason they split isn't ECS dogma. It's because they are shared across different entity types. Okay, so it's still saying to use composition. So that's, I mean, that makes sense. A waypoint probably only has kinematics. But to be fair, it's also pretty straightforward for me to just add the individual data types from these to my node. But here we're saying a ship node is kinematic, stats, engine, steering, sensor. Null if the ship has no sensor. So all that makes sense. Okay. So look at your sensor detection system. It queries kinematic stat sensor across all entities, player and non-player alike. A player resource with everything packed in would break that generality entirely. Yeah. A weapon node only exports kinematics and stats. A waypoint node only exports kinematics. The granularity buys you the same composition you had. Tags stay as groups. Your empty struct components, player non-player track list, have exact Godot equivalents that cost nothing. Godot equivalent, add to group. Okay, I keep seeing this add to group thing. What is add to group? I am clearly lacking some knowledge here about Godot. Add to group. Test with a persist of false. Adds the node to the group. Groups can be helpful to organize a subset of nodes. For example, enemies or collectibles. See nodes and... If persistent is true, the group will be stored when saved inside a packed scene. All groups created and displayed in the groups doc are persistent. To improve performance, the order of group names is not guaranteed and may vary between project runs. Interesting. What is a packed scene? Simple interface to a scene file, provide access to operations. Can be used to save a node to a file. Oh. Surely that's not how you save state. That looks like it's just saving a tscene file and loading. Okay, so the question becomes, will we be using add to groups for this? It's a node to a group. Groups can be helpful to organize a subset of nodes. Like, doesn't this mean you still have to... You're still going to have to cast the nodes to whatever type you need. Call group. As group. Get node count in group. Get nodes in group. Okay, so yeah, so this just returns an array of node types, so you're still going to have to cast. That doesn't help. Returns an array of currently existing tweens. What is a tween? Animation. Okay, I don't need animation right now. Any node that needs motion gets kinematics data, engine data as exported properties. Set of fields is always co-located and never queried independently. Say roll and pitch and steering are always read together. Keep them in one resource. The split should match your... Okay. If I keep these components separate, I'm still not sure how I would use Godot to iterate over all items that have these components. Okay, so the tag style. We would call get tree, get nodes in group, has sensor, has kinematics. Or, oh my gosh. group registration pattern. We would add it to the kinematics group. If we have engine and steering, we would add it to the motion entities. If we have a sensor, we would add it to the sensor group. Okay. Really, you're just showing me the registration. You're not showing me the actual logic? Let's close all these. This wasn't very helpful. I already know what registration would look like. What I don't know is what the actual processing logic would look like. If I am keeping data separate from nodes being visualized, would I then not have access to the groups? Paint me a picture here. Thanks. I do see my my viewers on Twitch and YouTube. I really appreciate you guys coming by to watch. If you're my friends, just being lurkers, thank you as well. You're if you are new here, you are watching a longtime C++ developer take his C++ code that he wrote for Godot, for a Godot front-end game, and just put it all in Godot. So I'm trying to get the lay of the land with how Godot works so that I can make the best decision for my game and my team to work on. Good point. Let me look at your actual systems to show what the processing code literally looks like. Now I can give you a precise answer. Here's the key insight you're missing. The node is the entity. It's not separate from the node. This whole time it was agreeing that I should keep data and node separate. Now it's saying the node is the container, just like an entity. The resources are its components. The system iterates nodes and reaches into their resources. The new flow, the node owns the data, the system mutates it, the nodes own the physics process, reads it to drive visuals. See, this isn't... I thought we were on the same page, LLM. Your current motion takes in these components as parameters injected by Flex. In GDScript, the system function receives the node, then reaches into its exported resource properties. This is your motion function, line for line, but reading resources off of a node instead of Flex-injected components. Concrete, enemy node visualization only. No logic here. Identical to what your current enemy script does, except instead of calling Briathorn model entities.get position, it reads self.kinematics.position. Okay. Concrete sensor detection. Yeah, so this whole time I thought I was talking to the LLM and we were on the same page. Like, oh yeah, we need to keep data separate from the visualization. Now it's saying the data is a part of the visualization. That's annoying. The sensor detection has a nested loop, an outer observer pass, and an inner all targets pass. The node group is the target query. It still didn't show me any examples. Are you kidding me? The node is not the visualization. It is the entity that also happens to update visuals. you still didn't show me any GDScript logic for what this looks like. If I am grabbing nodes from a group, how do I access the component resources? What happened to keeping data separate from the nodes? This doesn't make sense. The nodes are the visualization. You literally said to use self.kinematics.position to update the node's position. What is going on here? Look at this. The user wants separate data logic separate from visualization nodes. It's not just what I want, it's the conversation we were having. I'm going to throw this AI out the window. You're right. I contradicted myself. Let me be direct about the two actual architectures and stop conflating them. Let me look at your existing scene structure. Ugh. I hate programming. Okay. Let's see what it says. Architecture A, fat node. What I was wrongly describing. Data lives on the visual node as resources. The system accesses the node's components. Data and visuals are on the same object. This is simple, but is not separation. Right. This is what I was trying to avoid, unless this is how Godot expects you to do your work. Architecture B, true separation, what you actually want. Yes, this mirrors exactly what you have today. Yes. Entity registration auto loads holds all the entity data. Okay, so this would be like a data model. Entity data is a plain ref counted, no visual, no node. Correct. Motion system auto load iterates the registry directly. No, okay. This was more like what I was thinking, I think. Enemy visual node is identical to what you have today. It just reads from the registry instead of the C++ model. Yes, that's what I wanted. I don't know if I agree with the auto loads. I mean, I'm going to put this all under Briathorn, so I guess that makes sense. Oh, the systems themselves as well. Yeah, I guess we could do that, right? We could have a Briathorn object here, and we could be like, hey, systems, and then we would list all of our systems. So this would be like system motion, system sensors, system navigation. Like we could do that. And then on process here, which we don't have. So on process, we would do motion dot process. Oh, AI give up on me? Is that all of it? Okay. So that would, right. So that makes sense. And then we would have to, like these systems would have to have access to our data models, which I guess, so that would be the systems. We would have models, which would be like, model kinematics, model tracks, model weapons, model portals, etc. And then inside these scripts, they would just access Briathorn.model kinematics. In fact, we would define these below, I guess. I don't know if it really matters. But yeah, so then they would just access the model kinematics themselves. So now we're back to how this was how we currently work, which is our enemy script, for instance. We call it model entities. See, this is what I was wondering if we need to keep it as components or make it a little more defined as the different types of objects in the game. So we could do that, right? We could say instead of model kinematics, it is model entities. And this would contain all of the state per entity needed to exist in the game world. And that would be like the source of truth. This technically wouldn't ever get visualized other than for debugging purposes. Because we're playing an aircraft game, and the aircraft is relying on its sensors to know if something exists. So we could have entities. Model tracks. This would contain... This would contain like almost like lists of tracks for a given player ID. And then we could iterate over those tracks for those data elements. Yeah, I'm thinking this is what we need to do. I don't know what to do about the ID yet. Unless Godot has a way... Okay. Anyway. Motion system auto loads. Enemy visual node is identical. The key insight. Entity data is a ref counted. Entity data is a ref counted. It is never in the scene tree. System never touches node 2D. Visual nodes never contain logic. This is a direct translation of your current architecture. Okay. Honestly, this is kind of how we used to build some of our displays back in the day. So then my next question. What's the best way to manage mapping a node to a data model? For instance, in enemy.gd, we use, what do we use? Is it entity ID? Entity ID. For instance, in enemy.gd, we use an entity ID to perform a lookup in the model. We could also just have the data model return a handle with signals and slots to connect to. And then I guess... I don't know. Yeah, look at that. I called that. The key reason to keep integer IDs rather than using get instance ID or node references directly, they're stable and passable. Right, because you can't, like with an instant ID, like it says in the documentation, you can't take like a pointer, serialize that pointer's value over the network, and then pick it back up and expect that pointer value to exist in memory on the other side. That's not how computers work. So we could do, so this is turning into me implementing an ECS, which is not necessarily what I wanted to do. Um, so this is calling the model directly. I don't really want to do that. I still want to use the command interface. Um, this might be okay, I guess. I'm trying to remember how we used to do this with Qt. I think the data model was the source of truth, and we would use that to generate our entities. But in this situation, I actually want to use Godot as a level editor so I can drag and drop my entities in the game world here. Why they're not showing up? Oh, because they're so far away. Right? Because we use this, and this would initialize the data model, and then we use that data model to perform logic on. And then we reference the data model to update our node's position. It wasn't clear. Is the model itself is that a ref counted object? Is it? What did they say? Entity registry auto loads holds out the data. So I have these systems that perform game logic. Systems, let's see, motion, sensor, navigation. They act on data models. I don't know what to do about data models that are attached. I've started sketching out these concepts in Briathorn.gd, which is an auto loaded node. I'm wondering now about data that is attached to another element in a model. What approaches do you recommend? For example, an entity might have its own separate track list. One solution is just have the track list as part of the entity data. Is that what I do? So if you need to get a track list off of an entity, it's just entity.tracklist. Call it a day. Maybe that's what I do. Thoughts? Chat? Thoughts? Array of IDs on entity data simplest. Add the list directly to the owning entity's data, meaning the entity doesn't have a track list, same as not having the component. But it mixes relationship data with component data on the same object. Separate relationship registry mirrors flex semantics. Okay. Sensor detection equivalent. If not a relationship registry, ugh. Track motion equivalent. This is just saying, oh, it's reading my ECS stuff and saying, hey, if it's tagged with a track list, I don't like that. What about defining an entity data that has a track list data on it? I think the LLM is getting corrupted by my current implementation and is not giving me insight into ways of solving this with Godot. This is the right instinct, and looking at your components confirms it. Track list in Flex is an empty struct. It's not a data bag, it's a relationship tag. The actual data lives on the track entity itself. What this means for entity data, does this entity have a track list? Yeah. I think we just make this simple and say an entity has a track list, or a player has a track list. A player might be an entity, which is like a game object in this game. The key difference from option B, tracks carry their own data. Okay. Does Godot provide any way to generate a unique integer ID for these registry examples? Or do I need to come up with a solution? Oh no, we're not using get instance ID. That is not the answer. Resource UID for resources saved on disk. Godot saves UID. Okay, so it might just be add, which is probably perfectly fine until we want reproducible game state for like debugging purposes, right? I want to be able to play my game and maybe fast forward 30 minutes into the game after a bunch of game has happened and be able to be like, oh yeah, entity ID 33 appears right here at this time and it shouldn't. Therefore, that's a bug. But if that changes between runs, then that becomes a problem. And it's no longer stable. But doing an integer increment, technically, it's probably good enough for now. So maybe that's what we do. And really, it might not even be integer increment. Its next ID just returns the size of your, the size of your array. And then that just becomes your entity's index. All right, so now we define a data model. We allow these enemies to register themselves to the data model via the script file, just like we were before. I don't think we use these group things. Group things is nuts. Now the question becomes this command interface. I like the command interface because it's a single entry, a single point where state modification happens. Ooh, can I enforce state being read-only? Where it can only be modified via... How do we do this? Okay, let me ask the AI, see what it says. All right. Let's see here. So I still want my state to be read-only so we don't accidentally modify our game logic via other ways. Let's see if Godot has a mechanism for that or if we just have to kind of put up with it. All right. I like our discussion so far. Always be nice to your LLMs. You just never know. All right. I like our discussion so far. With the current C++ solution, I have a single flow of data pattern going on. That means Godot nodes can only read state from the models if anything needs to modify the state, add, remove, update, then it has to go through this Briathorn command interface. Can this be done with Godot scripts? Question? Let me look at your existing command classes to show direct equivalence. Yes, absolutely. Your Briathorn command pattern is trivially reproducible in GDScript. Well, excuse you. And it has a name, the command pattern. Go figure. Here's the exact translation. The command base. Commands are plain data classes with an execute. Briathorn barely changes. That's the entire implementation. Same call site as today. Why this matters. The unidirectional flow you have now holds exactly input node event, create a command, data only, no side effects. Command.execute mutates the registry. Visual nodes read registry next frame. Nodes never write to the registry directly. They only construct and submit commands. Entity registry is never written to except through command. This is the same. Yes, but what? I'm not 100% sure you're catching what I am dropping. If the registry has functions to modify the internal data, then the registry is no longer read-only. What can I do so that nodes can only access read-only state from the registry, but the command can modify the registry? Yeah, this was worried about. Since Godot lacks true access control, the practice Practical solution is splitting into two classes. The registry is a read-only autoload. Okay. I mean, if that's what we need to do, I'm okay with that. Yeah, GDScript has no access modifiers. You cannot enforce this at the language level the way C++ does, but you can enforce it by design through API surface separation, split into two objects. Commands receive entity writer. Nodes only ever call entity registry. Nodes don't have a reference to entity writer. They can't mutate the registry even if they wanted to, because they never receive the handle. The mutating API doesn't exist on the object they can see. This is the same enforcement mechanism your C++ model uses. Nodes call into a read-only view, and the command interface is the only path to the mutatable internals. The one honest caveat, a node could still call entity registry create writer directly. GDScript's prefix is a convention, not a lock. If you want a stronger barrier, simply don't expose create writer at all and call entity writer new directly inside Briathorn ready, pointing data at the registry's dictionary. Then there is no public path. Yeah. Right. I'm thinking Briathorn will handle commands and how does a data model know to handle a specific command type? Maybe I know I'm not overcomplicating this because I know what problems this leads to if we don't get this nailed down. I'm going to ask another Google. What I'm describing is basically MAV, model action view with strict write control, and Godot can handle this clearly if you separate the model, the actions, the view. So that's what I'm doing. I autoload Briathorn.GDScript, which I'm doing. I have model entities, which has positions, velocities. The action API. Has access to the model directly. Okay, so it's still doing the... man. So Godot doesn't really have a way... So this is going to boil down to making sure we as developers are just behaving nicely, I think. Oh, get a phone call. Could barely understand them. I think they were asking for a public opinion. Weird. Um, if my model entities contained a list of entity data resource and I returned an entity, does modifying it modify the internal state of the model? Resources are reference types, not value types. Gosh darn it. I do not. I don't want to say it aloud because I don't know how many people on here who are watching like Godot. But I'll say this: Godot is not letting me write the way I like to write code. So I might have to just acquiesce to the Godot way of doing things. A resource is a reference type. So if your model does that, then that will update it. Why this breaks? What actually happens? Important. Mental model. There's only one instance and everyone shares it. Yeah, I don't want that. I could call duplicate is a shallow by default unless you pass true. Deep copy. Don't return the Godot object at all. Recommend it. Okay, so... So yeah, I think I have to put read-only value types functions. Make resource immutable, manual discipline. How do you do that? Position, set value, push error, do not modify directly. This works, but annoying. Still bypassable internally. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's... I need to sketch something out. to actually play around with this. So I need to be in Godot, I guess, because now we're using Godot. So I'm not going to do components. I'm going to do what do you call, maybe it still is components or elements, because you have the data model. I want to make sure my terminology is right. I'm used to a model being like a list of elements. What do you call a data model? First, the data it contains. Is the model the list of data? So we have a data folder. But I want that data folder to contain the actual like game data. So do I have a data folder and then a models folder? Do I keep it all like flat? So we have data and models. So inside data, we'll create a new resource called entity. Excuse you? Visual shader node particle cone velocity? What? Resource. Entity. Okay. Now what do? Do I define it up here in the editor? Is it not a script file? Well, now what do? Do I do it here? Local to scene. If true, the resource is duplicated for each instance of all scenes using it. Oh, this isn't what I want. This is for like passing textures and stuff around, not for game logic. I almost got tricked. Is this... Wait, what? This seems heavy, actually. If this is reference counted, this isn't what I want. I'll be right back. My cat is going insane. Enjoy Pink. Be right back. Come on. Hey, what are you doing? Come on. Come on. Threw my cat out in the garage. Of course, I get a second viewer while I'm away. Hi, welcome to Twitch. Thanks for joining in. You're watching a C++ developer struggle learning how Godot manages data, if that makes any sense to you. I do not want my data to be reference counted. That seems crazy to me. Is that actually how Godot expects you to do data? I just realized Godot's resource object is a reference counted type. If I create an entity data for a data model to contain a list of, this will all be reference counted pointers. Does Godot provide a solution that isn't pointers under the hood? Kind of like a data structure? I might not have a choice. It might just have to be reference counted. In fact, maybe I saw a GitHub ticket about reference counted types in Godot. God, struct is too common of a word for me to find. There's over 5,000 pull requests in Godot. That's insane. Yeah, there's too many. There's no way I'll be able to track this down. A structure of arrays approach. If you let's see, honest answer: GDScript has no custom value types. Everything you define with a class name is a heap allocated reference counted object. There is no equivalent to a C++ struct or a flex component column. Built-in value types. These are actual stack values, no pointers, vector, blah 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 blah. Packed arrays, contiguous memory, passed by value, copy on assignment. Structive arrays approach. If you want something close to ECS, you can store all component data in parallel packed arrays indexed by slot rather than per entity objects. Yeah, I was wondering if that was what I needed to do. The honest trade-off. This is more work and provides limited real benefit in GDScript because the interpreter is the bottleneck, not memory layout. A tight loop over packed float 32 array is faster than a loop over ref counted objects, but GDScript itself is slow enough that you'll hit the interpreter ceiling long before your cache misses become your problem. That's fair. The ECS performance argument only applies to compiled languages. That's fair. Oh, that's fair. Okay, so I guess resource is the way to go. All right, so now the next question. I don't want my resource to be like local to scene. Okay, so do I define a resource as a TRES file or do I define it in script? Should I create my resource as a TRES file or derive in a GD file? I think the answer is a GD file. What each one is. File. Oh, this is so confusing. Okay, I think I see what's going on. A resource is not the same as a resource in Godot. So that's what I did wrong. So I need to create a script, call it entity, I don't know if I really need to export any of this. I don't know if there's a benefit or not to doing that. But this is going to extend resource. Class name entity extends resource. And then this will have a var position. All right, there it is. That's the core of this game. These 6 stats. They kind of map to D&D stats. So you've got like strength, actually, I think I document this somewhere. Yeah, here we go. Does Godot have its own like documentation syntax? So we have @tutorial, @experimental. We use 2. Okay, so it's 2 hashtags. Is that all we have? What else we got? @deprecated, @experimental. Looks like the answer is just 2 hashtags. Okay. So if I mouse over this, I should get documentation now. Maybe, maybe not. Okay. Oh no, does Godot not have multi-line editing? There we go. Whew. It's gonna panic. Why is it that every editor I've ever used for multi-line editing, they all use some combination of Control, Shift, and Alt, like some combination of 2 of them, but it's never the same 2, and so I always have to relearn which buttons to press for multi-line editing. What did I screw up here? Oh, I see what I did wrong. Ah, okay. So that's the stats data, which is yet another pointer. Ugh. Hurts my heart. Hurts my heart to the core. All right, so we have a pointer now to our stats. Are we making use of anything else for entity? Heading. Does Godot require an F? Ooh, it doesn't like that. Okay. All right. Enemy uses heading and position and stats. An enemy would also have an engine, so I need to define an engine. And then the engine has, honestly, at this point, I wonder if I could have AI do this for me. But I also kind of want to make sure I get down what I need to work. Throttle and brake. You ever heard of engine braking? That's what this is. I forgot what I was doing. Engine. Oop. Var throttle. Okay. Oh, it doesn't like that. Oh, is engine already used? Are you kidding me? Oh. Because there's already a Godot engine, not the engine of a vehicle. Damn you, Godot. What else can I use? What else can I use? Thrust capacitor. Um. Thinking of just renaming it to like vehicle engine. Hmm. I could. That might actually be a good idea. Do I prefix all of these class names with data? So it's like, so you know that it's data. So what do we have? We have position stats. I wonder if memory alignment's a thing in this. All this should still work. I haven't touched anything, right? Ooh, I did touch stuff. There we go. All right. Haven't broken anything. We're getting somewhere. All right. So I created the data engine, the data entity, which is all of this. So this is what makes up a general entity in the game because it's going to need stats. It's going to need an engine. It probably needs a sensor as well. So we will create another script and call it data, or we'll call it sensor. Class name data sensor. Yeah, this isn't gonna work. I need to fix these names as well. We should always have our file names and class names be able to map to each other so it's not confusing. What did I do? Did I screw something up? I screwed something up. What the heck did I do with my stats? What? Wait, is that a bug? Seems fine now. All right, whatever. All right, so the sensor, I think, right for now, we just have a field of view. Oh, yeah, we have field of view because the range is determined by your sensor stat at the moment. Um, okay. So that is that everything we need? So we have our stats, our engine to determine how fast we go. We don't have steering. I think we need steering as well, so we know how to turn. Scripts. Did I fix that? I did not. Okay. Okay. Steering, I think, has at least has roll. Do we have pitch as well? Let's see. Yaw, pitch, roll. I forget. What did we have? Roll and pitch. Okay. Um, data steering. That also goes on the entity. All right, so this will create a general entity in the game. Why is that grayed out? So now we need a data model to represent our entities. Is that also a resource? It's probably also a resource, right? This will be called model entities. Model entities extends resource. So in here, I would have var data. Oh, I don't know how to do this. Uh, I don't know how to. Is that not what I did? Declared but never used. What? Data is declared but never used. Is it because I made it underscore? Huh. Okay. I'm assuming I need to perform some kind of check here since technically you can pass any value in here. Um, -1 prints last? -3 prints second? Can contain any sequence of elements of any variant type by default. Values can optionally be constrained to a specific type by creating a typed array. Elements are accessed by a numerical index starting at 0. Negative indices are used to count from the back. Arrays are always passed by reference. To get a copy of an array that can be modified independently of the original array, use duplicate. Erasing elements while iterating over arrays is not supported. That makes sense. Difference between packed arrays, typed arrays, and untyped arrays. Packed arrays are generally faster to iterate on and modify compared to a typed array of the same type. So then why would you use an array? Also, packed arrays consume less memory. As a downside, packed arrays are less flexible as they don't offer as many convenience methods such as map. Typed arrays are in turn faster to iterate on and modify than untyped arrays. So then do I want a packed array? Oh, you don't get to do any type with packed arrays, it looks like. Yeah, because packed array is an integer. Okay, not a big deal. Carry on. All right, so we get the next ID. Um, This is rough. Throttle brake. I basically have to do this. So I don't see a better way to do this. How does Godot handle passing in a bad value? So I'm going to add this model to Briathorn, because that's where it's going to go. So Briathorn is going to have models. Model entities. Nope. Var model entities. Model entities equals model entities dot new. Okay. Ooh, doesn't like that. Is shadowing an already declared method? Oh yeah, okay. underscore. All right. Do we have an on ready? Where's the on ready? Right here. So if I tried to do model entities dot get position 0 before I've even sized this thing, var colon equals. Is there a way to do an ignore? No. Does Godot have a... Ooh, there's a ticket opened 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago. Eh, lame. What happens if I just don't set it to anything? Okay. Let's run and see what happens. Does it crash? Or does it yell at me? Out of bounds, get index 0. What's the Godot way of handling this? Because we're returning... I don't know what to do about that yet. So we can get position. We're going to need to get heading. I wonder if AI will help me with this. Let me... Ooh. What did I do wrong? Roll is not present. Oh, I need to do dot steering dot roll. There we go. All right. We'll see if this auto... Where was I writing this? Model entities... Yeah, here we go. Autocomplete for me. Ooh, throttle doesn't work. Isn't it engine dot throttle? Yeah. Okay. So we have position, heading, roll. I need to open up the data entity. Kind of do a side by side here. So we need to do the stats as well. Maneuver, durable. Durabile. Durable, compute. Get sensor. Sensor. Bunk. Get stealth. Stealth. Okay, so that gives us stealth. Hmm. You know, instead of doing this check over and over, I wonder... No, we still have to do the check. Is there really no way to do read-only? This would be a lot easier and a lot less tedious if I could just return the data entity itself. Unbelievable. Well, we'll carry on. So, maneuver, durable component. So this is essentially the stats component. Engine, sensor. Steering. Steering is roll and pitch. Position heading is going to become kinematics. Okay. So now I need a kinematics type. Data kinematics.gd. It's gonna have position, heading. Do they have anything else? Kinematics. Position, speed. We need speed. I have the need, or I feel the need for speed. Ooh, I'm gonna lose my heading type. That's annoying. It kills me that all these have to be like pointers. So I'm gonna lose out on this guy. God. My C++ brain is being torn apart by Godot. Steering, position, heading, speed. So now this becomes kinematics. Get rid of this. Okay. There we go. Okay. All right. All right. We have kinematics. We have a kinematics, or we have model entities. We have a kinematics type. We can access and load that in our global auto-loaded function here. Let's go ahead and actually let's verify. So I can do var id equals model entities dot next id. I might change that to entity id. But that'll create an ID, which I can then reference and get the position. Call get position. I'm already calling get position. I can print it, I'm assuming. Position. We'll run the game, see if position prints. Ooh. Oh, I call next ID, but I never actually allocate the size. So I need to do this. Var entity. No, var ID equals return ID, and then I need to do data dot append data entity dot new. Okay, did that? It printed a position. All right, there we go. I have slowly started the process of transitioning my C++ code base into GDScript, all because I am tired of dealing with the CI/CD pipelines with C++, making sure all that is getting maintained, compiled, and also paying server costs with switching to just pure GDScript. We can utilize the Godot editor for all of our deployments for whatever platforms we want to support, and it won't require nearly as many pulling in dependencies. The Godot CPP open source project for the GD extensions won't have to worry about any of that. I don't think the game we're making really cared too much about performance in the first place to use C++. It was more of just a way to explore, and since I am very experienced with C++, it made it a pretty straightforward idea to just use C++ for the game logic and Godot for the visualization logic. But I think at this point, something has to change, so I'm not spending so much time and effort trying to get stuff to compile and continuously work. So we're going to give the full Godot experience a try and see where that takes us. I'm going to end my stream here. Thank you for coming to hang out. If you were new to the channel, great. If you're one of my friends, I appreciate you. You know what? If you're new to the channel and you came to hang out, I appreciate you too. Thank you.